Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about an upcoming rules change, or let's go with enhancement to the ACH rules. This one is fraud detection standards for web debits. Stay tuned. Fraud detection standards for web debits will go into effect March 19th of 2021. That's a year away, a little bit over a year away. It was originally slated to go into effect this past January 1st, but realizing that there would be a need to be some more time allotted to the stakeholders in the network, that's the originators, financial institutions, and service providers, and more, to make this happen, the date has been extended to March 19th, 2021. Why? Well, this gives the industry more time to prepare, educate, and implement the required changes. What exactly is the rule change? Or the way I see it, rule enhancement. You see, fraudulent detection systems for web debits is not something new. Currently, the ACH originators of web debits are required to use a commercially reasonable fraudulent transaction detection system. Yeah, we had to do the quotes there. And that is to screen web debits for fraud. Because web transactions take place over the internet, the web, and the end user could be, well, just about anyone.
Proceed with caution.
We have more extensive requirements in place for them for that reason. This existing screening requirement will now be supplemented to make it explicit that account validation is part of a commercially reasonable fraudulent transaction detection system. Wow. Account validation is exactly what the name says. Let's validate that account. Is it correct? And at a minimum, the originator must use a commercially reasonable means to determine that the account number to be used for the web debit is for a valid account. That is, the account to be used is a legitimate open account to which ACH entries may be posted at the RDFI, the receiving institution. It's time to get real and take some ache out of the ACH. This is a requirement that is placed on the originator, but depending on the size of the originator, it may be a service that is implemented and provided by the ODFI or a service provider. It's the originator that the rules hold responsible, but it is something that, in most cases, the service and software providers, or the ODFIs, will offer for and to their originators. This rule is for account validation, and the supplemental requirement applies to the first use of an account number or changes to the account number. So for recurring entries, you should have to only do this once unless the account information changes. Does this mean we have to go validate every account we have now or have ever processed for? That's a big no. This rule applies to going forward, which means it applies to account numbers obtained for initiating web debits that are new. The rule does not apply retroactively to account numbers that have already been used for web debits. But if the account holders do change the account information for the account being debited from one of these pre-existing entries, then yes, you will have to, at that time, validate that new account information. Do you have to validate that they own the account? No. The minimum standard imposed by the NACHA operating rules requires originators to validate that an account is open and accepts ACH entries. It does not state that you have to validate that the person providing or the entity providing the information has authorization to the actual account or is the actual account owner. Now that doesn't mean you can't or that you shouldn't. That is a determination, or we could say a risk factor, that each originator and ODFI will have to consider. Just exactly how can this be done? The rule doesn't give specifics and doesn't say you have to use a preferred provider. There are services out there that do have ways of doing this. Not to promote or advertise for any one particular, but a couple of service providers that come to mind right away are people like Gyact and Plaid. However, you could also use prenotes or even microtransactions to accomplish this. As long as the prenote is successful, which means it's not returned, then you have validated that account. If you receive an NOC from the prenote, then make the changes in the NOC, notification of change of course, then you have also validated the account and met the rule requirement. But won't it take longer to do that using prenotes? Yes, actually, yes, it will. But that's why I mentioned service providers that you can contact to see what they offer. Won't that cost more if we use a service provider? Well, yes, you do have to pay for the service. There are others, and the professor recommends going with the option that meets the rule requirements and works best for your processing needs, but also your risk controls. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a marvelous Monday. Please feel free to email me, kevin@paymentsprofessor.com. And if you would like more, you can go to our YouTube channel, or you can go to the Payments Professor new and updated website for 2020, paymentsprofessor.com, where we have additional courses and information available to aid payment professionals in learning everything they need to know to advance their careers, get raises and promotions, and to do so while also helping to protect their financial institutions, customers, and businesses.